Welcome to Speakers on Edge. We're doing the spotlight sessions where we have real people with real transformation and real lasting change. My guest today, who's going to share with us where truth igniting her passion and purpose and transformation. You've seen it before. Shaina, welcome back.
Thanks for having me again, Jake.
It's an honor to have you here. I want to know your story. I want to know where you came from, because the last time we had you on the show, you took us on this incredible journey. You gave us techniques, you gave us methods, you gave us things to think about. I have a question for you.
Bring it on.
Who are you? And why do we want to connect with you?
Oh, man. Well, so you bring up our last session. And from there, I really want to, give you a glimpse of kind of where it came from, maybe. And that answers, of course, the question, where did I come from? Or who am I? And I am obviously a woman of resilience. I'm a giver of permission. I'm a mom, a wife to a logger. He's out in the woods early in the morning. And as I was starting my business, I had come from a big sales background. I'd sold millions of dollars in contract sales. And I was bebopping along, right? I was like, hey, I'm making money over here. And people ask me how to do this over there. And as that kind of progressed, we were expecting our first child. And that did not go as planned. He was stillborn, full term, and my world fell apart. But it actually kind of didn't, because I had things in place, like what I shared with you in our last session. I had things in place. And as I kind of worked through all of that kind of adversity, I found these different things that were pulling me through, or that had given me that strength, where I know a lot of people, they've been through something and they hear the words, "You're so strong," right? And from there, as a coach, as a motivational coach, speaker, and author, I was like, how do I answer that question for myself? Like, where did that strength come from that then allowed me to give it away, right? Like, how do I do that as a coach? Do I walk through that in a way, or how do I walk through that in a way that allows me to give it away?
I've also been through the situation of losing children.
We've talked about that.
We didn't go full term with the two that were lost. They unfortunately, they became miscarriages. And when it was happening, I remember the depth of emotions and the helplessness, the failure, the deep grief. The emotions that happened were quite overwhelming. And you said you had things in place. How did you handle the emotions?
It's one of those things, as you know, you work through it. You don't necessarily push through it, right? Because that ends up, you push it down and you don't address or feel through that. And when you can sit in some of those things and just process, and you breathe through it. Right? And so when things come up, like an opportunity, or someone reaches out for coffee, or what have you, you can feel where you're at. You can understand your, just where everything sits for you, where that sits in your rhythm, to where now you know how to answer that question of like, do you want to go out? Is this the next right step? Like, knowing yourself, having those answers for yourself is very, very important. And yet you don't know until you go through them, right? That's the thing. Like, so many people are like, I don't know how you did it. Well, I don't know either. But taking that time afterwards, and now we were blessed enough to have a rainbow baby girl, and just 16 months later, and the whirlwind, I called it emotional whiplash, because you can have those two things in place, right? You can have grief and you can have just incredible joy and gratitude. And it's that beauty of where they come together that we get to have that space that says, okay, what's the next right thing?
How did your husband handle it?
Oh man. I had a question. I had someone else ask me, how was I coping? Okay. And my answer was through conversation. I had some beautiful people walking alongside of me that just came out of the woodwork, right? Because not everybody can or understands or what have you, right? Because they're feeling their way through not only what you're going through, but what they're going through. And so for him, he didn't have a very big network like I had in life and business and how that all just intermingles. And so for him, I was bringing a lot of those conversations back to him, because again, he didn't have a ton of conversations. He had some really cool people in his very small circle. But I just had that broader circle. And the advice or the thought that I want to share on that is, don't do it behind closed doors. When you are in that partnership, in that deep relationship, that marriage, when you're going through something, yes, you definitely go through it individually, but don't do it behind closed doors.
So by that, do you mean you showed him your authentic emotions and he showed you the authentic emotions that he was going through?
Yep. And everything I participated in, or I went to this healing retreat or this whatever, I would invite him. The door was always open, right?
Yeah.
And if I needed to go away and go cry, it was communication of, this is what I have to go do.
And
yeah,
obviously 16 months later, your life was blessed and turned around. When you took a look at your gorgeous new baby for the first time, what were the emotions like?
Oh man, it's so hard to explain. I think the biggest thing was getting through it. Like, there was so much, just so many physical things, right? Because I'm postpartum, the grief and joy thing, it was a lot of survival mode. And it wasn't until about another 16 months, maybe it's a cycle, maybe someone can drop in the comments like, oh, it's this magical number, I don't know. But she was about 16 months old when I felt like I could breathe again. I was like, okay, I can get out and do things, right? Like I can get back into my business, which had held me through a lot, but it was like a wave of going into it again. I remember I mentioned my husband is a logger. Well, he was a mechanic until my daughter was about 7 months old, and he went out in the woods. He went logging. That was his dream. He had talked about it for a long time. And I remember thinking, like, what about me? When do I get to, like, live again, right? And it actually started with, I needed to start showing up again. And so I opened a sisterhood and this group mentorship program where we just sit in resilience and we take all of the different things, the shelf help, right? The book that you have on the shelf that you've never applied to your life, we put boots on the ground to it. So we come in there with just this micro lesson, like 8 to 10 minutes. I kind of get on that podium of like, this is what we're talking about. Recently I did one on luck, right? It was St. Patrick's Day and I did one on luck and like how it looks like from the inside versus the outside. And so I started this sisterhood where we talk about things and we apply them and we take action. Because a lot of times when we're sitting in our story and we don't know what's next, it becomes, when we can put action on it, it becomes something we can work through, right? Like I was saying, that movement of working through emotions and such, and especially as women, we cycle. And so we go through dips and dives and skyrocket every like 28 days, right? And so having that rhythm in place helped me a ton, and to show up in a different way in my business, kind of put the two together, if that makes sense.
I'm loving where this is going, because what you're showing is a progression. Mm-hmm. And this progression happens in so many people's lives, and we get stuck while we're going through that progression. And you noticed a pattern that every 16 months. Now, I was 20, so a couple of years ago, not long, a few decades, I saw my first professional tarot reader.
Okay.
And he said to me, you know, you're going to look at your life and you're going to think that your life was run by an accountant, because there are going to be patterns that repeat every however many years or months. And you'll start to see these patterns. And so for you, 16 months, it seems to be a pattern. And if you look closely, you'll see how the numerology actually affects our lives and how we repeat cycles in our lives. And we can actually pretty much plan situations happening because of certain times. And then you've got the astrological influences and the other, let's see, what is it? You've got Saturn returns, which is about between ages 28 to 33, and then ages 56 to 66. You go through it again. So it's fascinating when you start going down that path of seeing how people's lives change with patterns. And here you have these patterns changing your life. And your husband, at about 16 months, 7 months old, your daughter's 7 months old, he then goes to live his dream life of being a logger. I love this, because not only did you go, well, what about me? What's my dream life? He went, well, I've got my daughter, I've got my darling wife, I have the love of my life. How do I want to be?
Right, like, let's go.
And let's go. And you had the strength, and I'm going to use the strength word again, to support him to live his dream. And now I see this time and time again with couples, because one or the other will suddenly shine, and the other one will be the support for the shine. They say behind every great man is a great woman, or behind every great woman is a great man, or behind every great person is another great person.
Right.
I don't care about the gender factors. What it shows is that here you are, you had this very difficult tragedy in your life, in your relationship. And it's a tragedy that I've seen time and time again with my clients. And I've seen marriages on the rocks because of it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it gets real. And this is the part that people are afraid to talk about, is it gets really hard when you're grieving. And having someone that you can open up to and share is really important. Now, when it's your partner, okay, that's great, except when they're grieving for the same reason. Because then as you're grieving, they're grieving, and all of a sudden they're double grieving.
Right. And yet we share marriage, we share a trajectory, right? But we share different visions. And we can't, and this goes for any and all relationships, everyone carries a different vision. And when you're not, you can't put your vision on somebody else, right? Your expectations, your what have yous of what this is going to look like. You can communicate and you can get on the same page, right? But we have such different perspectives, and we need to remember that as we're going forward. And that's what I love about my sisterhood group. We get to do that next to each other, but not on top of each other. Like I like that visual that you just gave me.
Yeah. Now I had to come back because you said we have our own visions. And we need to live those and not force them on the other. But I see that so many times. I've done a lot of relationship coaching. I've had people come to me all the time with relationships and everything from relationships, sexuality, birth, deaths, marriages, divorces, business, you name it. I've had clients over the 30 years I've been coaching with every topic you can think of. And so many want to control that other person. Your vision is going to be this. I want you to do this because if you do that, if you don't do that, I'm going to feel unsafe. How did you handle that level of safety? Did you feel safe when he decided, okay, I want to go and live my passion?
It started way before then, right? Because if we do things behind closed doors, and then we come into that room and say, "This is what I'm going to do," they're like, "Wait, when did this happen?" Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, really, for us, it was our debt-free journey. And going through a Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University class, paying off all of our debt, buying a house in the right dollar amounts, right, for our income, then paying it off in 3.5 years. And then 2 or 3 years later, he comes to me and says, "I want to go logging. Oh, and by the way, I have to go out in the woods for 3 months, so I need a camper." We didn't have a camper, right? Like, oh no, but we didn't have stress. We didn't have payments. We had health, right? We had our baby girl. And it was his next right step. But it didn't start just in that conversation, right? Because literally 8 days later, he was in the woods.
Wow.
Yeah, 8 days later. Like it was like, right? Everything just fell into place. But it starts way before that. It's something that I teach with individuals is recognizing and cataloging those things so that we know where we came from, right? We can find gratitude in all of those little bits and pieces. And so when the next thing or the next opportunity comes up, it becomes, oh, that's either the next right thing or it's not, right? It very much becomes black and white, but we need to know what came before.
Yeah. And this is This is why I asked the question. Because on the surface, okay, baby's 7 months old, hubby wants to head off into the woods. 8 days later, he's in the woods. Hang on a second. That didn't just happen. And this is where a lot of people don't understand, is these things don't just happen. They take time for us to feel, be. There's a gestation period for everything, and we get lost in that gestation period. Now, once he had gone into the woods, you're now left with a baby on your own. What about me? And you went, well, I'm going to create the sisterhood.
Right.
But you had the space to process. You had the space to question. And you understood what you actually wanted. Now, since then, by creating your sisterhood, you're now helping others be more empowered. Have you got any examples of some stories, without names, of course, or identification, of people who have been in part of that journey?
Yes, so many of them. So I have a couple that kind of come to mind. And it really comes down to, again, understanding the backstory, because you're the only one that truly does. Nobody else needs to. Remember that for yourself, boys and girls. No one else really needs an explanation of why you did the thing, right? I get all the time the thought or question, how do you adapt? How did you do that? It's like, well, if we know where we came from and where we're headed, that vision, then as answers A and B, black and white, they show up. It just takes that boots on the ground, one step at a time, right? One example, Kelsey, we'll call her Kelsey. She had come to me and she said, I'm always double booking myself. I'm missing my son's lunch with mom on random Thursdays at school. I've got these parameters I need to meet with my job. And I want to build something, right? Like, I've got this vision, but I also have the things in front of me, my family and like how I got here and all of that. And I love being able to lay that all out on the table and help someone, women usually, specifically, to make the rules. Because, there's a few rules that we can't break, right? They're called laws. Some of them change by state or country. But essentially, like, you as a human, we have the autonomy. And if we don't lay it all out on the table, we don't know where we're coming from or where we're going. We're just doing the next thing. And it's like, but are we going this way or that way? We can still be left and right as we're going. And so being able to sit down with her and work through just the fact that, hey, you make the rules. Let's put it on your calendar. Like, where does it fit? And then you can set appointments knowing Tuesday mornings are a no. Or Thursday lunch is just always a no, right? I'm using the word no a lot. And then also, like, hey, Fridays is when I do coffee dates or Zoom connections, right? Jake has a calendar. He uses it. Right? Like, he's got boundaries. He's setting them. He's making the rules, right? And so can you. And that's what we have to remember. Another example, I see Jake, he's laughing. I see him. Or something. He's doing something back there. Another example in sisterhood is we've had some really cool decisions made in that room, whether it's cutting hours, getting a side job, restarting something, applying for growth positions within their companies. And those decisions are starting in that room, kind of in that safe, soft place that everyone else has just enough of the backstory where the women in the room start doing this. right? They start agreeing with that momentum, with that next thing. I go into the nodding of the head, so I'm going to go out on this little tangent for you here. As you set the rules, create mantras for yourself, repeat things out loud, have the affirmations, like have the words in your language, because I don't have all the answers. I don't have a cheat sheet. Well, I have a cheat sheet, but you have to have your language, right? Because if I use a word that doesn't resonate with you, it's not going to stick. But when you have those things in front of you that you're sharing, that you're saying, one that gets thrown back at me all the time, and I just love it. I have a mantra, and that is, Mary, my daughter, is part of the deal. Period. Whatever that looks like. Our session here today, we're in early morning, so she's sleeping. Like, she's still part of the deal. She still had to be accounted for, right? And when I say my mantra, other people are shaking their head. They're going, yep, yep, yep. And when you're setting those rules for yourself, when you're sharing those things out loud, and you're getting the resonant nodding of the head, that is what you're going for, right? When you can get those others around you, that open door, that space that's nodding their head, then there's no judgment. There's no, needing explanation of the backstory. It's like, this is my rule. This is where I'm going. And if you don't like that other people are nodding their head, you need to change your rule. You need to change what you're saying, right? Because if they're not necessarily agreeing with you, especially like the mantras and the rules and the things for you, right? Being surrounded with women that are not, they're only pressuring you because you're pressuring yourself, right? It's not this is the rules. This is where we go. It's, no, this is Shaina's rule. This is Jake's rule. And I love being in that space.
Yes, I was giggling about the Jake has a calendar because, yes, yesterday there was a bit of a glitch thanks to daylight saving. That's okay. Today was better.
Yeah.
So I had to giggle at that. But you also brought up a point that I find also happens in all relationships is, and you said it, Shaina has a rule, Jake has a rule. Now, this happens in our relationships very much so. How did you handle the new rules of your husband being a logger and being away, going off into the middle of nowhere with bits of timber, and your home? How did you handle the changes of rules? Because I would imagine what the rules were in the beginning, they don't match what they are now.
Oh, absolutely.
There are still some that are very similar, that are non-negotiable. But hang on.
So I mentioned the mantra, Mary is part of the deal. Okay. So how does that fit into the scheme of things? And then the word that comes to mind that I use a lot is rhythm. And so looking at, again, being able to zoom out, lay that all on the table and say what works where. And so the first season of logging, my husband was gone for 9 days and then home for 4. And now, moving forward, he's home pretty much every night. There have been a couple job sites that have been too far away from home. And so we set the camper up. We spend a couple nights a week over there. It's just a change of scenery, right? Because I make the rules, Jake comes in here and he's like, how did you do it? Right? I make the rules. And so if his job site is too far away, so this is the example from last fall. His job site was too far away. It was an hour and 45-minute one-way commute. That's a lot when you have a 10-hour day. And so I said, well, it can't be. I'm not spending the night on Monday nights because of X, Y, and Z, right? Like, I came to the table with rules. And he had another rule. He's like, well, I have to be at doing this thing after work on this day, so I'm not spending the night out there on this night, right? And you're comparing your rules and setting it to that rhythm. And it's the same with going into soccer season or, going into, hey, I'm going to get this certification and go back to school for 6 weeks or 6 months, right? It's saying, okay, this is what's going on, is what's going to be dropped, what's going to be picked back up, and coming to the table with either new rules or those non-negotiables. Like, Mary is part of the deal, right? And so walking that out on paper and not just going at it in chaos mode, because chaos mode brings us burnout. It cycles through us, and it doesn't allow for forward motion. It's just there. And we want to live in fulfillment. We want to live in that vision every single day. And now there are days that chaos comes. And so sometimes it becomes, okay, I'm going to live this vision because I have this other thing going on, right? On a random Tuesday. I'm going to live this vision 20% today, right? Like, I've got those 3 hours, and then the rest of the day, bring it on, right? Whatever may come. But again, you make the rules. So you get to decide, like, what that looks like in the day-to-day, how you set that to a rhythm, so that when you look back, you're not like, okay, first of all, where did the month go? Why am I living like this? How, you're doing comparison mode too, right? You have, you're looking at someone else and saying, well, how do they do it? Well, let's look back. How are you going to do it? Because it doesn't matter how I did it. How are you going to do it?
How do you handle when you have a rule and external factors come along and that rule doesn't actually fit to the external factors situation, and the only choice you have is to change your rule?
I don't like that question. Because I make the rules.
I've got one.
Right. Because I make the rules. I'm thinking, like, if something doesn't fit, okay, what even just recently, okay, in-person networking, being lucky enough to be a stay-at-home mom, getting to do things like this in those early morning hours or during quiet time. We don't even have nap time anymore, okay? And then having an opportunity that says no kids allowed. Okay? All right. So
I can feel the hair on the back of my neck standing on end at that one.
Totally. Because now it becomes somebody else's rule that says, okay, I need to respect this, first of all, right?
If I choose to respect it.
Yep, there's always, like, so I'm thinking of maybe a particular in-person networking group that I used to go to, and I know I would be welcome to, but not with a screaming child. Okay? And so then walking into that room with my 3-year-old who can handle a room and not be interrupted for an hour. She's got a time limit too, right? We all do. But if she starts acting up, I know for myself, I can just leave. Like, that's okay too, because of that mantra, Mary is part of the deal. Right? And so so many of them, if there's a rule that contradicts my rules, you can just say no, right? Like, even just going back to the emotional side, like as you're
But
working.
if I say no, they may not like me anymore.
But
And I mean, I'm being facetious, yes.
oh, totally.
But
Totally. But there's different things and opportunities for different seasons. And we have to remember to place that, like that ultimate trust of that ultimate plan in God that says, all right, a different opportunity will be open that's more aligned. Right? A different conversation will be more aligned. It didn't go the way I thought it was, or could have, or what have you, right? You go in with expectations. We have to remember that the people listening, they're going to know what to take on and what not to. And to have that peace, knowing yourself, standing in that identity that says, it's going to be all right.
there's one very particular word to describe exactly what you've just said. Hope. And combine that with faith. And then bring it all together with love of the self. I don't mean that from that ego, oh, I love me, look at me. Yeah, no, not that creepy sort of stuff. I'm talking about loving the self, honouring and respecting ourself.
Right.
And then living with standards and values and honouring our values, our beliefs, our community, our friends, our family, our desires, our hopes and our dreams. And you're living evidence of this.
Every day.
Is it easy?
No, not every day. No, sometimes I'm a couple weeks. I even just threw like an adult-sized tantrum because something didn't go as I had envisioned it.
An adult-sized tantrum. I love that.
Oh, totally. Totally. And it looks different a little bit. Not totally. Like, I didn't quite lay on the floor kicking and screaming, but it was close. I wanted to, right? Mm-hmm. But having that peace, reminding myself of that peace, cataloging it, saying, the next one will be better. Or I can change the rules and I can stop doing that thing that made me mad. Right? like, and yet if we're in chaos mode, if we're like super up close to something, we can't see. The term out here is the forest through the trees.
Yep.
Right?
You can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah. And so when we can zoom out, when we can give it that space, breathe life into it instead of inhale chaos, all those decisions and things, we don't wake up one day and be like, how did I get here? Right? We know how we got here. We know how to get out, right? It's even just that emotional, like what we started with, that walking through it instead of being stuck in it or pushing it down.
It's bringing that peace to ourselves, and it's reconnecting ourself to our peace and our passion and our purpose.
Right. Without it, the word that came to me was like without being attached to it, right? Like just being so attached to it. It's like everything is in that rhythm and it's in that flow, and we keep going so that we can be connected, right? That point A to point B, where we've been and where we're going, is in connection and in alignment.
And there's also the important factor of, as you're in that flow, there's a really important ingredient in that flow that's called the unknown. But the secret of being, when you're in that unknown, is knowing that you are capable, and you used the term earlier, changing the rules.
Yeah.
Now, I liken this to I'm driving from city A to city B, because most of us can relate to driving a car. And as I'm driving, I don't just point the car towards that city and go. Because I have to turn left, I have to turn right, I have to go straight. I might even have to go winding up a mountain and winding back down on the other side. I might have to go up a mountain, which is hard, and then coast going down, which is easy. There are all these unknown factors that may not have us looking in the direction that we want to be, but we're actually in flow. And when you connect with your direction, with your passion, with your purpose, and you understand that it's a process that doesn't just happen in 1 second, it's a process of your life. It has got you to this moment, and that life can have positive situations. It can have seemingly negative situations. It can have emotional situations of depression and all sorts of other challenging emotions. And then there are the most beautiful times ever. The minute you held Mary.
Yeah.
The mixture of emotions at that point would have blown my brain out.
Right.
Because on one side, there's the grief from the past, from the loss, and now I've got this beautiful little angel blessing. How do you process that? The brain and heart explodes, and there's all this love flowing out. And look, you'll be looking at your husband going, I love you so much. And he's looking at you going, oh, I love you so much. And look at what we've just created. And he's got his. This is the joy of life. When you connect with that lump that's going ba-dump, ba-dump, ba-dump in our chests.
Yep. It's really from your head to your heart. You can close that distance. I think a little space is good, right? But you can close that distance. Right? And yet it can be so far. When we're in chaos mode, our heart is not in it, right? We're in that survival mode. We're in the minutia of that day to day. And it's just not as necessary as we might think it is.
And you have techniques that you teach to help people to connect to their hearts, don't you?
Yep. It starts first with my journal. It's a guided journal. So I wrote the opening letter and the closing letter, and you get to do everything else. There are over 400 guided journal prompts. It's called Anchoring Amidst, and it is based on those 6 pillars of resilience that we touched on in my conversation with you last time. In that conversation, I called them bricks. Same thing.
Yeah.
And yet we get to do it in a very subliminal way in this journal, where it just becomes something that you do, right? Something that you see, something that you notice. Staying in that goodness. And then I get to take that and put boots on the ground for it inside of my sisterhood. And it's just been such a cool place to be.
And as a cool place to be has been listening to you today. Now, how can people find you?
I've got QR code on the screen. You'll see that in the closing as well. ShainaHargens.com, anchoringamidst.com. Hit me up. Let's talk. If the journal isn't enough, right? If you want more right now, there's a way to make that happen.
I love that. Shaina, you have been an amazing guest today. Thank you so much for being on Speakers on Edge, the Spotlight session. That's it for today, folks. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks, Chase.